And it doesn't get any more exciting for me to have Israel Adesanya on a card, being able to call his fights in glory, see him kind of progress in the kickboxing world now, to see what he's doing. I always try to explain to people, when you fight in MMA, like MMA is still kind of like a newer sport where you don't compete as much. So a lot of the guys on UFC cards may have 10 fights, 5 fights even, you know. A guy with 15, 20 fights is a lot of experience, but in kickboxing, we're used to fighting guys with 60, 70, 80, up to over 100 fights. So that's what Adesanya is used to, guys with all this experience. So I think that's why he's so calm, so cool, so collected every time he gets into the octagon. Welcome back to another episode of Building Hurting Bombs here at Bazooka Kickboxing and MMA, brought to you by Perfect Sports Nutrition. Make sure if you want to pick up any of your supplements, use code Bazooka20 with the link in the description below. So again, this week, every time there's a big UFC card, I like to bring my guy in, Aaron Bronsteter, to talk. And I think this UFC card, Aaron, is one of the best I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, it's certainly one of the deepest, especially when you have 40% of the UFC's divisional champions all fighting in one place. I mean, that's insane. Very rarefied air. So certainly a big event for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't get any more exciting for me to have Israel Adesanya on a card, being able to call his fights in glory, see him kind of progress in the kickboxing world now, to see what he's doing in MMA. Makes me, honestly, it's like makes me happy to see a kickboxer being talked about as one of the pound-for-pound best in mixed martial arts.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty incredible what he's been able to do, especially at a lighter weight class. You see a lot of guys like maybe Mark Hunt, Alistair Overeem, make that move from kickboxing and do it successfully, but we haven't really seen it in the lighter men's weight classes. You know, we've seen Joanna Jędrzejczyk with her Muay Thai background make it in the women's on the women's side of things.
Shevchenko as well, I would like to add as well, right?
But in terms of the men's divisions, you don't see a lot of kickboxers in the lighter divisions, because you have to be really well-rounded to excel in the lighter divisions. If your focus is strictly on striking, you really have a lot of catching up to do. But Israel's been doing MMA for some time, and it seems like any questions we've had about him have been answered.
Yeah, the biggest question, obviously, is his wrestling. Can you take him down? And that's everyone's keys to victory. But he's shown over and over again his ability to manage range, use his distance control, his feint, his distance deception. Like, he keeps guys, you know, at range, and they just have a hard time coming in. And then when you do commit to come in, he catches you. You know, he uses good counter shots. But I think people forget he's only, what, 12-0 in MMA, something along those lines.
20-0.
20-0, okay. Well, he's got 80 fights in kickboxing, which I always try to explain to people. When you fight in MMA, like, MMA is still kind of like a newer sport where you don't compete as much. So a lot of the guys on UFC cards may have 10 fights, 5 fights even, you know. A guy with 15, 20 fights is a lot of experience. But in kickboxing, we're used to fighting guys with 60, 70, 80, up to over 100 fights. So that's what Adesanya is used to, guys with all this experience. So I think that's why he's so calm, so cool, so collected every time he gets into the octagon.
Yeah, 100%. And it seems like nothing phases him. You know, he seems pretty confident in his ability to beat anybody in any division that he's able to at least make weight for. So even heavyweight apparently seems like it's on his radar. So, you know, it's just interesting to see someone with that level of confidence in their abilities.
I mean, the big storyline coming into this fight for Izzy is when he was talking to Ariel Helwani, he mentioned that he's going to come into this fight about 195 pounds. Do you think he's trolling us here, or do you think that's pretty accurate?
I think what his explanation is, Kai Kara-France is going to be cutting weight, and, you know, just out of camaraderie, he's going to cut weight with him. He's going to go in the sauna. He's obviously not going to watch what number it gets to, but yeah, I mean, as long as he weighs over 186, he'll technically be a light heavyweight. But it wouldn't surprise me if he weighs in under 200 pounds.
Yeah. And I mean, you've spoken to a lot of the journalists and the fighters around. Is there anyone really giving Jan Blachowicz a good chance here? Does you know, the odd makers don't seem to really think so. Everyone I spoke to all has Israel Adesanya winning, but not one person have I heard say Jan has a chance.
Yeah, like I mentioned on our podcast, he's like Rodney Dangerfield. That's obviously a play on Rodney Dangerfield. The guy just doesn't get any respect. He's in his last, you know, once Saturday rolls around, he's going to have been an underdog in 10 of his last 12 fights, and he's 8-3 in his last 11. Yeah. So, I mean, this is a guy who continuously gets overlooked by whether it's the betting public, whether it's the media, whoever, everybody really. And he's ascended to becoming the champion. in a division that's notoriously difficult to become a champion. How many light heavyweight champions have there been in the last 10 years? I think there's only been 3 with Cormier, Jones, and Jan. So, obviously it's a product of John Jones walking away from the division. But let's not get it twisted. You've got a guy who has earned his way to becoming the champion and has done so as a massive underdog across the board. We can't underestimate this guy. We can't disrespect this guy. He's got as good a chance of anybody to win this fight. I think obviously you see the records. You see an undefeated guy in Israel. You see a younger guy in Israel. I mean, Jan, I believe he's 38 now, 36 maybe, somewhere between 36 and 38. I can't remember. I think it's 38.
Okay.
So you see an older guy, a guy with losses on his record. And I think you look at it just on paper, and it seems like Israel is the rightful favorite.
Yeah. Now, Israel wins here. Do we look at this win as being like, yeah, we knew this, and this is what was expected? Are we surprised that he wins? Or if Jan wins, are we kind of like, wow, we didn't expect this? So I'm trying to kind of put my mind in how I'm going to react, because I think a lot of people expect Adesanya to win. That when he does win, it's kind of like, yeah, we knew this. We might not get that big reaction of him winning.
This is what happens when you have big superstars in the sport. You always have the expectation that in order to progress the storyline, they've got to win.
Yeah.
It's not that easy. Yeah. I mean, look at Conor McGregor against Poirier. Conor McGregor was a 2-1 favorite. Everybody expected, we saw it. We saw what he did to Poirier the first time around. But people don't take into account all of the different things that go into these bouts and what the fighter's strengths and weaknesses are, how much they've improved. These kind of things are overlooked because everybody wants the story to move on, the story to progress. But that's not how mixed martial arts works. This isn't pro wrestling. Yeah. What happens in the cage, as Dominic Cruz says, is kind of the truth. It's the truth that night, and it's the truth going forward. So if Israel's not able to win, now we know that A, he's no longer undefeated. B, maybe he shouldn't have moved up to 205. It's a big risk for him. And see that Jan Blachowicz is absolutely for real, and it opens up the door to a lot of interesting light heavyweight bouts for Blachowicz.
Yeah, and I just, what makes this fight intriguing to me is more of not can Izzy win, because I still have the confidence in him going to win, but it's more of how is he going to handle the extra weight, the size, the bigness. So I'm kind of hoping there's times in the fight that we get to see maybe Izzy pressed up against the cage a little bit to see how he reacts. Can he escape the big size? Can Jan actually take him down to wear him out, to fatigue? Because to me, everyone and everyone else, we want to see that fight with John Jones. And I think what my picture is, I just think John Jones is too big, too strong, too athletic. And going back to our show, we talked about genetics being a big factor. I feel Adesanya in his bone, in his frame, maybe can put on a little bit more weight, but John Jones' brothers are NFL players. They're monsters. So he has the genetic, the frame, and to be able to put that size on. So to see John Jones and Izzy fight as a heavyweight kind of seems maybe too far-fetched now.
I guess we'll see. I mean, it seems whatever Israel wants to do, he ends up doing. So, he's similar to Conor McGregor in that way. He calls a shot. He has kind of a plan of where he wants to progress his career. Him and his coach, Eugene Behrman, have talked about this at length, about why there's certain steps that they want to take going forward. It seems like he wants to fight at 185 again this year before he faces Jones. He was saying December maybe for Jones. He wants to stay busy. He wants to stay active. The thing that I'm eager to see for this fight is, what happens if Jan takes him down? Like if it's one thing to get taken down by an 85er, but if you're getting taken down by a huge guy like a Jan Blachowicz, what's Israel going to do to get up? And I wouldn't be surprised if you see him throw up triangles and things like that. Apparently, he's really fallen in love with his grappling.
Yeah.
And throw up triangles in the past. So maybe he uses that as a mode of attack against Jan Blachowicz if Blachowicz is able to get a takedown. Now, Jan's not necessarily the best wrestler. I don't think that wrestling is. I'm guessing the wrestling is probably not what he's going to try to do in this fight, although I think strategically it would benefit him. But I think Jan has a lot of faith in his power, his striking, and the fact that he can take a shot as well. Yeah. So this fight has a lot of question marks for me, and that's what I love about it. It's just I don't know how it's going to go. I don't really have a real vision of how it plays out. I think the most likely outcome is an Israel KO, but I also wouldn't be surprised if Jan is able to score a KO win or ground and pound or even a decision. Who knows? Yeah.
I think as a kickboxing background that Adesanya has, I picture the fight. Okay, so like it's very obvious. When you're the smaller guy against the power guy, you stay out of the mid-range. You don't want to sit in the pocket where he can hit you. So right away, based on Adesanya's fighting style, he's going to fight at distance, range, moves. So it doesn't really matter, you know, what if it's more, can Blachowicz close that distance, which I don't think he can because Izzy's so good at managing it. But I think the Adesanya game plan in the safest way is for him to kind of manage distance and keep chopping away at those calves. Like the calf is almost like a chin where like there's no muscle protecting your chin. You touch that right point, whether you're a heavyweight or a lightweight, you're going to go out. So maybe the calves are at that point where he can still stay long, use good kick timing on the exit, and slowly chip away the legs, chip away, because he can't just sit in mid-range like he maybe did with a Whitaker and take punch for punch. This is a different game now. So staying long, using his kicks on the outside, you know, feinting, trying to keep Blachowicz away, stance switching, and then I think the calf kick or kicks in general are going to really, really favor Izzy, even though Blachowicz has a good left kick. I mean, Izzy's seen kicks. He's a kickboxer. We talked about the 80 fights. So it's more, I think, the game plan of Izzy to use his kicks, where Blachowicz, it's sit in there, maybe take one shot and try to throw 2-3 punches and then grapple a little bit more. So I think that those are my keys for those two guys.
Yeah, I think the kicks are certainly going to play a factor. And you look at what happened in the Paulo Costa fight. Paulo Costa, I think on Fight Night probably weighed at least 215.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, how much more is Jan going to weigh than that, right? So to say that there's going to be a massive size discrepancy, I mean, there will be, but I don't know if it's going to be that much more than the discrepancy there was between Costa and Israel.
Yeah, I mean, I just think Izzy, his style is his style. He has a style that, I mean, he's long. Like, I think, I don't know, is there a height difference between the two? I mean, I feel that that's something you would know.
I don't think there's a big height difference if there is one. I think Israel actually might be an inch taller than him, but I think in terms of just, you know, you look at the mass and you're going to see a lot bigger of a guy in Jan in that regard.
Yeah. Like I said, Izzy moves, keeps his distance, and can Jan close the distance is the question. And I think Izzy has fought bigger guys, and I'm just curious. I think that's the word I'm saying. I mean, I'm curious to see. It's more of, I'm going to be watching more Jan, I think, in this fight. Kind of see, can he close? I'm going to see what he can do more than how Izzy's reacting. But I'm intrigued. I'm excited. I think this just opens up some cool fights. But still, top two fights of all time that I want to see in the UFC right now would be Izzy, John Jones. But my number one would be John Jones and Francis Ngannou. So hopefully those happen this year.
Yeah, I hope so too. I think at least one of them will. Unless Stipe is able to beat Francis. If Stipe beats Francis, then we got a whole new conversation to have. But I think that we're going to see one of those fights if Francis is able to beat Stipe for sure.
All right. So let's talk about some of the other fights, Aaron, while I have you here. Amanda Nunes back, which is she's a huge favorite, probably deserved. But does Megan Anderson have a chance?
Yeah, I mean, Megan Anderson has a chance. She's going to give Nunes a look she hasn't really seen before. The tallest opponent that Nunes has fought, at least at the higher levels of MMA, have been her height, basically 5'9". So we're talking about 3-4 inches in height discrepancy in this fight, and that does matter. Yeah. You know, maybe Megan Anderson throws a head kick, catches her, and clips her. Who knows? Yeah. I think the likely outcome is that Nunes wins this fight, either by knockout, submission, could even go to a decision. Although I would doubt that. I think that if Nunes wins, it'll be inside the distance. That being said, I think that when you look at Megan Anderson, she's a legit 45er. She might actually be a 55. If there was an actual 55 division, like what Kayla Harrison fights in the PFL, Megan Anderson's probably a 55er. She cuts a good amount of weight to make 45. Yeah. So I think she'll probably have a 10, 15, maybe even 20-pound advantage in the cage against her. So she'll be a lot bigger. That said, we've seen the weaknesses of Megan Anderson. She gets taken down fairly easily. Yeah. So, you know, if that ends up happening, if Nunes lands even a single takedown, I think it could be a lights out for Megan Anderson. I think the fight is that fragile for Megan Anderson. She needs to keep it on the feet to have any chance to win this fight. Yeah. We'll
put your Mick Maynard hat on. Who's left for Amanda Nunes? Is there anyone worth? Is there any excitement? I know we talked a little bit about if Kayla Harrison ever made her way, that would be a big super fight for her. But I'm someone who I think that Amanda Nunes just, to me, I want to see super fights from her as the best we can. I know there's anyone to really get her to fight into these big fights. So maybe a send-off fight with Kayla Harrison, or maybe the last one with Shevchenko. But I don't see many options for her anymore.
I think those are the two most intriguing options: is the rematch with Shevchenko, even though Nunes has won the first two, and the Kayla Harrison fight. Cyborg fight's not going to happen as a product of Cyborg being in Bellator. So what do you do? I mean, I'm not that interested in the Holm rematch. I'm not that interested in the Durandame rematch. I don't think Juliana Pena is going to have much for her. Aspen Ladd is still quite young, and she's been out with a bad injury. So there's just not a whole lot that I look at in that division that intrigues me at all. I mean, Yana Kunitskaya just had a nice win against Ketlin Guerrera, but I just don't know, like, gun to my head, if somebody says, who do you think is the best challenge for Amanda Nunes right now, I'd probably say Kayla Harrison.
Yeah. I mean, just because it's different too, and we've already seen her beat, Shevchenko twice now?
Yeah, twice. Yeah. Once, both times by decision, actually. I think a lot of people thought Shevchenko won that second fight. I'm not one of those people. I thought that Nunes won 4 rounds in that fight. Yeah. But it was a close fight regardless.
Talking about close fights, I mean, the bantamweight title, I don't think it gets much closer to that. I mean, the odds makers have it as a pick'em, and I have to agree with that, because when trying to decide, I'm trying to get my parlays ready for the weekend, and I'm literally jumping back and forth between Peter Yan and Aljamain Silver. I can't really pick who's going to be a winner, but I think as of now, as we're doing this podcast, my gut is telling me Aljamain Sterling.
Yeah, I'm on the other side of it. I think Piotr Yan is somebody who we just haven't seen his full game just yet. It feels like when he fights better competition, he fights better. He's one of these guys that fights down to his competition when he fights a lower level of competition, and fights up competition, faces really good competition. I just don't think we've seen everything that this guy has to offer just yet. And I think that in the striking realm, big advantage over Sterling. Sterling is always dangerous if he can get a takedown, if he can, get some sort of sub. I think that's obviously his best path to victory. But I just think that Yan has so many tools. He's still young. He was at ATT for this camp, just turned 28. I just think that from camp to camp, you're going to see such growth from him. Yep. And I think that he has so much upside in this sport. And it's not to write off Sterling. Again, this is a pick-em fight for a reason. It's a very close fight. But if I'm making a pick, I would pick Yan in this fight.
Yeah, but with Sterling, I mean, I think a lot of it may be that recency for me too. What he did to Corey Sandhagen in that quick win, and then we saw Corey Sandhagen did to Frankie Edgar. It's kind of like, man, Al that good, So it's hard to kind of put that past my mind.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think it is recency bias, but we also have to remember that Aljo has had fights where not much happens. He's had fights where he got knocked out by Marlon Moraes. Yeah, that's right. That was kind of a freaky thing where he was kind of dipping down for a takedown and got caught with that kick. Yeah. It was just like the timing on it was just a perfect storm of danger for Aljamain Sterling. But I think that we kind of know what we're getting with Sterling at this point, and we know that it's very good. But I still think with Yan, he still has more gains to make, and that's why I think that in this fight, we're going to see a more complete game from him, and we're going to have to see him fend off takedowns, unlike he's had to in the past.
Yeah, I guess that's the question, right? Can Aljo get the fight to the ground to kind of make it his element? Because on the feet, I think Jan's just so powerful, and I mean, so good at just being able to land those power shots, good boxing pedigree. Now, the time he spent at Tiger Muay Thai, I mean, big striking advantage to him.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the difference.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I also am someone who I want to see Peter Yan is Peter. How did you say with the accent?
Piotr.
Peter. I can't even
Piotr.
say
Piotr Yan.
Piotr. I can't even say it, even if you paid me there. But Yan there, I'm gonna call him Yan. I mean, I think he. Yeah, right. Like, I mean, I'm jumping back and forth, so I can see him winning as well. But I like Sterling. I like his style. I like his personality. So I think I'm a little biased there. And I like that he works with Sarah.
I think Sterling has an awesome personality. I think that he'd be a great champion. And I think he's got all the talent in the world. Is just, that kind of stuff doesn't come into play when it comes to a matchup, right? Yeah. And I just think that Yan has more advantages in this matchup.
Yeah, and then a few more fights on the main card, which the one I'm excited for, and we talked about it again yesterday, was one of my favorite strikers to watch in the UFC is Rakic. Alexander Rakic is one of my favorite to watch, and if you're going to put him against someone fun, you might as well put him against Thiago. Someone kill each other, so I'm really looking forward to that one.
I've been bouncing back and forth on this one like you have the previous fight, because I just know that if this is a striking battle, Santos has such crazy power, right? Yeah. And he can put anybody. I don't care what your name is. I mean, if he hits you with one of those bombs, you're in trouble. But I also know that Rakic has good wrestling. I know that Rakic is improving a lot. You mentioned his striking. His striking is very good, very technical.
Yep.
I understand why Rakic is the favorite, but I'd be a little bit gun shy on this one if I was gonna say bet on this fight. I don't know which direction I would go in.
Yeah. The problem is with Santos right now is coming off those knee injuries. And I mean, Rakic is a good kicker. If I'm Rakic, I'm kicking the legs, I'm chopping the knees, I'm mixing things up. And I think you'll see probably a lot of leg kicks to kind of, after an injury, whether you get knocked out, whether you're a knee or elbow, there's always that thought in the background. So I can guarantee you that Santos' first leg kick, he's going to be thinking, hey, did that hurt? Is there more damage? So that's where Rakic has to kind of take advantage of.
Well, the problem with leg kicking Santos is that he can hit you with one of those counter shots. Rates,
yep, good point.
So that would be a good strategy if you were going to target his knee for that reason. But just know that if he eats one and he throws one of those counters, he could be in big trouble very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, he did so well. That was the thing against John Jones, and I mean, it's just a shame that he had that little bit of time off for those injuries because he looked fantastic. So I think.
The injury in that fight, I think in the first or second round, still managed to go the distance in a fight that some people thought he won.
Yeah, I mean, I like him. Good heart, good style. I just hope that his knees stand up because that, to me, is one of the potentials to fight of the night.
Oh, for sure.
And then another one, Islam Makhachev. I mean, I know he's being kind of termed as the next Khabib. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't think there is an ex-Khabib right now. I mean, he's Khabib's protege. And as I mentioned to you on our show, the TSN MMA show, if you want to check that out.
You should, yeah.
One thing that Daniel Cormier said this past week that really caught my attention was, if Islam can do what he does in the practice room in the cage, this guy's going to be a monster. You always hate hearing that.
Yeah.
Because what that means to me is it translates to, this isn't the guy who shows up on fight day as much as he could. There are guys like Mike Pyle is an example of a guy that people said he would just kill everybody in the gym. Like, he was just unstoppable. But then when it came to fight time, something wouldn't click in.
Yeah.
Now, I hope that's not the case with Islam Makhachev because this guy's got unbelievable skill. But that kind of talk always kind of gives me pause.
Yeah.
I want to see him have a dominant performance against a guy the level of a Drew Dober, and then I'll be sold. Because right now, I haven't seen enough from him to be able to say, yeah, this guy can be a contender at lightweight.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's more of maybe it's the pressure getting to him. I think like there's DC saying this on broadcast, and Khabib's in his corner, so maybe that the pressure of living up to that is just maybe getting to him. It's making him go into these fights a little bit more hesitant and not as free as he kind of would like.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've seen this over the years, Joe. It's like there are just some people that do so well in the gym, and then on fight time they can't turn it on. And I don't know if he's one of those guys. I can't say for sure. I'm not trying to bury this guy. I'm not trying to say this is the guy who shows up on fight night. I'm just saying I don't know yet. I don't have enough evidence right now to support the idea that he's a future contender at lightweight. The right people are saying it. You've got Khabib saying it. You've got Daniel Cormier saying it. You've got Javier Mendez saying it. So I want to see it. I need to see something first before I can make that jump.
And this is actually a good transition because I wanted to mention this was Khamzat Chimaev talking about someone who wanted to see him more to see if he's worth the hype. And next thing you know, I mean, there's talk about him basically retiring based on not being able to heal from the coronavirus.
Yeah, I noticed Khamzat Chimaev has basically scrubbed his Instagram. If you go to it now, there's just one picture, and it looks like he's put it all behind him. I know he spoke to Dana White and Ramzan Kadyrov, the dictator of Chechnya. They've both convinced him to resume his career. Apparently, he's a big role model for the young Chechen fighters. And all I hope for is though that they don't rush him.
Exactly.
Take time, whatever it takes to get himself to a point where he's not showing any sort of symptoms of being a long hauler from COVID-19. It seems like it's really serious. And for them to say, oh, he's going to come back in June, let's pump the brakes a little bit and let this guy resume his career in a safe way so that you can get the most out of him. It's not just about his health and safety. It's also about trying to take a guy who could be the biggest prospect that the sport has seen and utilizing him in a proper way where you can actually, take advantage of his upside and take advantage of his potential and see what he can achieve as a healthy young man.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is he came in so fast, so aggressive, getting these finishes. So he kind of moved from coming in, fighting back-to-back to now potentially having a fight with Leon Edwards, so who's ranked like 4 in the world. So he moved up so quick and all that heat and attention, which is kind of hard, to kind of be an athlete at that opportunity and lose these things. But I think he's young and he's talented, where the smart move would be to maybe take a year if you need it. I mean, he can't be rushed into it. I think, like you said, this is one of our potential future stars. So give him his time. He's young. I'm pretty sure he's young enough where a year off won't hurt his career. But to see him go out like that, I think just shows all healthy athletes that, maybe we got to be extra careful about the virus, 1, but 2, it could really affect you and impact your career. So it is pretty still serious.
And we still know so little about this virus because it's so new. So new treatments are coming out all the time. And like you mentioned, it kind of manifests itself differently in different people. And obviously he's having a really difficult time with it. And it goes to show the severity of this virus. And we also don't really know what the long-term effects are on organs and things of that nature. Apparently there can be really detrimental effects on people's organs going forward if they do get it. So, just wishing him the best, hoping that he can and get his career back on the road in a safe and healthy manner.
And another cool storyline, maybe not cool, but I mean, I say it cool because I like watching him as a commentator and seeing him fight. But Dominic Cruz is headlining the prelims, which a lot of people are making a big deal about, but he's kind of like, doesn't matter to him. He's staying cool, collected, and showing his experience in media day.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. A lot of people will say that it's an insult that people on the prelims. The fact of the matter is, on a pay-per-view, more people watch the prelims than the pay-per-view.
Big time,
right?
Yeah.
It's free to air. Well, I mean, not free to air. It's on ESPN Plus in the US. It's on TSN in Canada. So it's on cable, but at least here in Canada. So being the main event of the prelims is actually right where you want to be. So people shouldn't say, oh, it's insulting to Dominic Cruz, the legend of the sport. I don't think it matters to him. And I also think that he wants more eyeballs on him. So I'm excited to see what he can still do at this stage. I don't think he hasn't had a win in about 5 years.
Yeah.
So he's only fought twice in that time. So it's not like this guy's on a terrible losing skid. But I want to see what he still has left. I think he's going to be able to beat Casey Kenny. I think that his skills have probably grown a lot, and we just haven't seen it. I mean, you're throwing him right back in there against the Henry Cejudo, who's one of the great fighters in the sport's lower weight classes of all time. Off of a layoff, right? Like, how well do you expect him to? Now, this is a more realistic expectation for him to get a win here. And if he can't beat Casey Kenny, then maybe he goes back to the drawing board and says, dude, should I continue doing this? I have a career doing commentary. I'm doing unlocking victory for ESPN Plus. He's got a lot on his plate in that regard, and he's very good at it. So I understand that he loves fighting. He wants to keep doing it, but you got to be realistic about your future and also your future health, if you know that you're not going to get back that championship level. Yeah,
and I mean, the positive of his last loss against Cejudo was more leg chops, right? So it wasn't like big brain damage or anything like that. So, and listening to him commentate, his brain and his mind still seem to be there. And everyone who talks about him, they talk about him as this crazy animal training, always in the gym, strong-minded. He's so strong-minded, he's like, yeah, what's ring rust? He doesn't even believe in it that he's so strong mentally. But you got to think the amount of visual reps he's been doing, being a commentator and studying fights and being the analytical, athlete and commentator he is. I'm sure his mind's there. And I think we both agree, those who dabble in, a little bit of sports gambling here, I think this is a good value here. I mean, you have Casey Kenny here as a slight favorite.
Yeah, I think it's good value as well. I still have faith in Dominic Cruz that he can do this. And, having spoken to him, he talked about being a commentator and how that can be both good and bad. He says that right now he's trying to shut off an encyclopedia that's in his head of all the different fighters that he's researched over time and focus on just one. And while he said that is difficult to do, he said that being able to focus on just one has been really nice for him because he can really pick apart the nuances and skills of one individual rather than having to focus on so many at a time.
And another few fights that we want to keep an eye on. I know we mentioned Sean Brady being one guy that I kind of liked, and he's got a tough scrap against Jake Matthew. And Kai Kara-France are probably the other guys that I'm keeping close eye on this card.
Yeah, I want to see what Benavidez does too. I think that this is
right.
an interesting to Askar Askarov. So yeah, there's a lot to like about this card, and I think that there are probably about 4 or 5 fights on the undercard of this outside of the championship fights that could headline a fight night card. You've got the Cruz Kenny fight, you've got Makhachev Dober, you've got Askarov and Benavidez. Like I think there's a good amount of depth in this card that you could really take and put on any other card, and it would be a real highlight.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I just think that last 3 fights got me so excited. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's happy to have cards like this. It almost reminds me of the old school where pay-per-views used to be stacked, and I can't honestly think of a card this stacked. Maybe the last time I can say a card this stacked, if my memory serves me right, is when, was it the first on the Fight Island, when they really stacked the card?
Yeah, that was a pretty stacked.
That one, yeah, that's the only other one I can compare to.
So it certainly is interesting in that regard. And I mean, UFC 200 was pretty stacked, but with John Jones falling off of that card, it lost a little bit of its shine because it also only had 1 title fight, right? So I think that this card is certainly among the deepest in UFC history. Well,
Aaron, thanks a lot for coming and talking to us. I know, one more time. I appreciate it. Everyone, listen to more of Aaron and I speaking on the TSN MMA show. And pretty cool, Aaron is leaving the Building Hurting Bombs podcast to prepare for an interview with Dana White. So make sure you kind of follow Aaron on Twitter, which, let me tell you, you will not be disappointed. And watching Aaron's Twitter is probably just as exciting as watching the fights. He's got all these cool stats and up-to-date info. So make sure you follow him on Twitter. Anywhere else, Aaron? What else?
Oh, you flatter me. That's a very nice thing.
It's true. It's true, though. I really agree with it. I think I keep saying your tweets are unique. They're not just copied and pasted. They're well thought out. They're statistic. They're, interesting. So that's why they always flash your name there on the TV when we're watching the fights.
All right. Well, much appreciated, Joe. And look forward to speaking with you again next week when we can recap everything that happened to this crazy card.
Yes, sir. Enjoy your interview with Dana White. I'll be checking it out after.
Yes, sir.